Well, with us this morning to review the papers, author and broadcaster Emma Wharf, and in the studio here, it's Matthew Stedland, presenter and writer. Thanks so much, both of you, for joining us. Emma there, lighting up the big screen, which is lovely to see. And we'll get straight to it, guys, I think. Emma, we'll start with you. It's The Observer, and they've been investigating, haven't they, the state of prisons in England and Wales, and the findings, well, they're quite damning.
They are, and it's probably not a surprise. We know that prisons have been overcrowded for decades, but this is an Observer analysis of a lot of data from around 3/4 of prisons across England and Wales, and they've been finding inadequate conditions and very, very unacceptable treatment for prisoners. Senior figures across the sector and politicians have been saying that prisons are now in the worst condition that they have been in, that they've ever known. Overcrowding is the main problem. There's around 87,000 in our prison population, and we only have around 950 empty spaces. And often these spaces are not where they should be. They're totally inadequate to the actual prisoners' kind of needs. This obviously has consequences. It leads to prisoner deaths. It leads to suicides. It leads to serious assaults on inmates and on staff. And what I found really worrying, Leah, as well, was the huge increase, a very alarming increase in self-harm amongst women in women's prisons, an increase of around 51%. So it's a very alarming situation, and it's only getting worse.
Yeah, and there's calls for, Matthew, an early release scheme. But we were saying in the break there, weren't we, that we're not surprised by the findings there.
No, and this is not the most obviously popular story when we're all struggling with the cost of living. Who's going to take time out to think about people who've been convicted of crimes? But actually, I think it was Winston Churchill who said something to the effect that the way we should judge ourselves as a society is how we treat the most vulnerable in our society. And in many ways, prisoners are just that. They're often out of sight, out of mind. It's really important to treat them with humanity, proper conditions. Apart from anything else, by the way, if prisons don't work and people re-enter the community, they're almost certainly more likely to reoffend. So in the end, it comes back to bite us.
Indeed. Another big story, Matthew. This is from the Sunday Express, the Home Secretary saying that Labour, well, they're sabotaging any of their attempts to deal with the illegal crossings of the Channel here.
So the Channel crossings, I think, is going to be an absolute lightning rod at the next election. This is such a toxic issue. It's part of the culture wars. It's also a real issue, of course, and a lot of people are very concerned about the number of people coming across. The Conservatives, you might argue, are panicking because they don't seem to be able to get a grip on this. The Rwanda scheme looks unlikely to work. They'll defend it to the hilt. What this strikes me as being is the Home Secretary looking to scapegoat an opposition when the Conservatives have been in power themselves for 13 years. So she's effectively trying to tar Keir Starmer by suggesting that people who work for him or with him are trying to sabotage her plans to get a grip. Labour, for their part, are pointing out that it would take 13 years to clear the backlog. Now, this is a backlog where asylum seekers are being processed, and what the Home Office, for their part, is saying is that this is a legacy backlog. Well, it's a legacy backlog, but the Conservatives, as I say, have been in power for 13 years.
I think you're right there. It'll be one of those key election battlegrounds, won't it? So that will rumble on for weeks and weeks to come. Emma, talk to me about the other story that you picked from the Mail on Sunday. It's accusing kind of bank bosses, energy bosses of bringing home big bonuses. Meanwhile, we're all struggling with the cost of living crisis here.
Yeah, well, it's hardly news that, just sort of how unequal the division of wealth in our society is. But I think this has been highlighted in the last year or so with the cost of living crisis. Many, many businesses, such as banks, as you say, energy firms, supermarkets, have done very well, thank you very much, out of the cost of living crisis. They really have been raking in the profit. So this is the Mail on Sunday, using one of their favourite terms, fat cats. And they've been highlighting the fact that bosses have been raking in well over £1 million in pay and perks, things like that. their analysis, they looked at 100 of FTSE chief executives, and it shows them cashing in, despite the fact that their customers are struggling, really struggling, with energy bills, with their mortgage costs, with spiralling fuel costs. And yeah, according to the Mail on Sunday, it exposes these very, very disturbing divisions between the multi-millionaire fat cats and the hard-pressed families. And, you know, Leah, yeah, it's a sunny day today, and, you know, hopefully we get a bit of summer soon. But actually, things haven't got a lot better. Inflation is still way too high. Things are still very, very difficult for a lot of people, and we're facing a tough winter ahead.
And that's the thing. I had my energy company on the phone to me a few days ago saying, actually, do you want to increase your monthly payments? Well, no, not right now. I can't afford it.
So my energy company has said to me over the last couple of weeks or so that they want to now charge me double, so that my direct debit will double, which I find quite extraordinary. I'm taking it up with them now. Not everyone has the energy to do that, but no pun intended, but that's exactly what we should be doing, challenging our energy companies, I think. This story, by the way, if we have time for it.
So this is in the Scotland on Sunday, and again, it's touching on those issues of how much we all have, but it's the festival season underway, Edinburgh Festival, which I've never been to actually, and their chief executive pointing out there's a lack of public funding there, Matthew.
Yeah, so it's about money again, isn't it? Yeah. It's about resources. I'm not sure there's going to be a huge amount of sympathy for the chief executive of the Edinburgh International Festival, who's saying that there just isn't enough public funding, I think, and that the festivals are being stretched to breaking point. But it is a really important part of the cultural bloodstream in this country, the festival scene. I host lots of events up and down the country in festivals, literary festivals.
Hotels and
it has a real knock-on effect. Actually,
yeah.
I was listening on the way in this morning to the studio from a performer at the Edinburgh Fringe, I think it is, who is saying that his flat that he's renting, a 3-bedroom flat for the month, now costing £5,000. So it's incredibly expensive for performers now, even to turn up. If we don't get it right, as you say, there are knock-on effects for tourism and local businesses.
Yeah, well, let's hope that it sorts itself out very soon. Emma, we're talking about Jamie Oliver next, and this is in the Sunday Mirror. I've always been a big fan of Jamie Oliver. You know, he talks a lot of sense, and what he's saying here is he's calling on the government, isn't he, to say that school meals should be free for all children.
Such an important point, Leah. I'm so glad that we can talk about this story because, you know, often there's silly stuff in the silly season. But this is such a key issue. Nutrition, good meals, even one meal a day, good, you know, balanced meal a day. It's so crucial for young children, but for teenagers, for children at all ages, at all levels of their development. And it's all very well, it's brilliant that there are free school meals. But what happens during the very long summer break? And for those of us who are parents, it is a very, very long summer holiday. So what the Trussell Trust have found is that, the Trussell Trust have found is that one in four, a quarter of teenagers are going hungry during the summer because they're not getting their free school meals. So Jamie Oliver is saying free school meals can't just be limited to term time if we truly want to help people. He's making a really good point. You don't turn on good nutrition. You can't turn it on and off. If you want to develop mentally, physically healthy and just be a happy young person, you need decent food. So he's calling on the Prime Minister to get behind this and, you know, to really think about the fact that children need good food all the time, not just during the term time.
Yeah, it's so important, is it? And on social media, lots of people are actually sharing, you know, depending on which supermarket you do your shop with, they'll provide a free meal for younger people, for children, basically.
Yeah, and of course, with any story these days with social media, you get a backlash of people say you shouldn't have children if you can't afford to have them, and that sort of nonsense. Actually, we should put children at the front and centre of policy. Every child, as Emma says, deserves to be able to have a nutritious meal. 3 nutritious meals a day, I'd say.
Which is so important, because when you hit that 6-week holiday break, you know, the bill piles up, and feeding children can be a real strain for so many people. We're going to talk about weather in the next hour, but just very quickly, it is going to be better, isn't it?
Well, I don't tend to trust the tabloids when it comes to weather forecasting, because I think it was the Express earlier in the summer that said we're in for a great summer. It's been probably the worst summer I can remember. We're drowning like wet rats, but on the front page of the Daily Star, shiny ball of fire spotted in the sky. Apparently we're going to get 30-degree temperatures at some point soon. Yesterday say I saw a flash of light in the street. I thought it might be a speeding camera. It wasn't. It was the sun.
It was the sun. I love it. I love it. I'm ready for the sun so badly. For now, Emma, Matthew, thank you so much. Do join us in the next hour here on Sky News Breakfast. So we still have so much to come up, so do stay with us. But we want to talk a bit more about how the government hopes social media firms can help tackle channel crossings as it prepares for a week of migration announcements. It's going to be a big week for the government and for Labour, so we'll be talking all about that and a little bit more. We'll have Matthew and Emma back going through the papers and delving in a little bit deeper with some of those stories.